the auto-scaling groups is what is the elastic part of this whole thing. So this is why it confuses students, because it's called elastic load balancers, and I don't think they're elastic. It's the auto-scaling groups that that have more instances when you've got more traffic and more load, and then less instances later on. So you'll see when you do the lab this week is outstanding. So you really enjoy it. So there's certain things you specify in the launch configuration. You specify the AMI, which we'll talk a bit more about in a minute. The instance type, whether you're T2 micro or like, I think I used a C4 extra large or something, 4 CPU one, 4 vCPU, and it worked great. And there's few different ways you can scale. Manually, you can just sort of go in and up and down it yourself, scheduled. So that'll be good for something like, you do overnight batch processing and you need some more cores every night. So you can just turn them on, say, between midnight and 4 AM. And dynamic, which is what most people are using. So you're looking towards CPU load or something similar to scale up or scale in the instances. And the whole idea is you link the auto-scaling group to the elastic load balancer. So as you get a new instance, the load balancer knows to distribute load to it, to distribute requests to it. So the next thing I'll have a quick chat about is, why do you need to scale? So the more obvious bit is when you have load spikes. And this is more commonly with web applications. This is generally what we're talking about with the load balancer anyway, web-based applications. So obviously, if your company is doing some advertising or you're running a TV commercial, and there's lots of cases built around Shark Tank when they go, oh, we've got this great product, and you put it in your mouth and it makes your breath taste good. And this is our URL or whatever it's called. And then of course, there's a couple of million people in the US watching that Shark Tank, and they go type it in. And of course, if your website's not up to it, all those hits, it's not that they're slow, it's just that they'll break completely. In the late 90s, it used to be called the Slashdot effect, and then it used to be called the Reddit effect. More recently, it occurs on Facebook as well. It's if you get a video that goes a bit viral, or you release a blog post and lots of people start clicking on it, you want to make sure that your website can handle that traffic. So remember, there's a couple of ways you can set the load, set the scaling manually or scheduled or on demand. You can use some of those strategies together as well. So if you know you're about to air on Shark Tank, I wouldn't leave it set to on demand, because it's quite slow to ramp up the number of instances, like one every couple of minutes. And by the time then the whole thing's probably aired and you haven't got enough instances. So you could, before you're about to air, you could just get, turn it up to 100 instances before it starts, and let it then do the load balancing. And instead of adding one instance at a time, you might tell it to spin up 5 or 10. If it gets a 65% load, you might want to get it to spin up 10 more instances. So, there's lots of things you can do there. What a lot of people don't talk about is these reasons, attack reasons, that you might want to load balance. You might have a fairly well-known pattern for your website. It might be fairly constant through the day, or it might have a 9 to 5 nice little spike. And then the on-demand, might put 1 or 2 instances in the day and then drop them off at night, and it might be great. But a lot of types of attacks that you can get on the web will just put hits. They might be spam, or they might be a password attempt trying to get in. And obviously you're going to have some security to stop trying to have those repeated attacks. But now and again, someone releases a smart attack that you haven't seen before, or gets through your security, or whatever it might be. And the attack hits take up just as much CPU as legitimate users. And the web server doesn't know the difference. It says, oh, I've got to spend 1 CPU second on this attack URL. I better do that. And, oh, this person's trying to put an item in their shopping cart. That's going to take 1 CPU second. I better do that as well. And then all of a sudden, if there's a 200 to 1 of attack hits versus the add to cart hits, your CPU is getting used up by the attack hits. If you don't have any auto scaling, your actual website appears to break to the normal users because it's just all the CPU and resources have been taken up by the attack hits. So in this case, say it was a 200 to 1 ratio, normally you might be running 2 instances. You might need to scale up to a couple hundred to absorb those attack hits so you can still run your legitimate user traffic at the right response rate. And even though you don't make money out of those attack hits and 200 instances might cost you some money to run for a little while, it's still a lot better than crashing your server. So the idea is just to give you more time to resolve the attack. So you can get your security people in, you can ring up a contractor that you know might be able to get into it. You can get your IT manager out of bed if it need be or whatever it is, but it can give you a couple of more hours to try to resolve the attack without the downtime. So if you didn't have auto scaling, you'd be crashed. With auto scaling, you might have 200 instances running that you don't want, and it might be costing you, I don't know, what's that going to cost you? 20, 50 bucks an hour. That's really, you know, it's really nothing. Might be $200 an hour if they're bigger instances, but still it's better than crashing. Now, I want someone to put their hand up to tell me how auto scaling saves you money. So someone type in the text box, I want to explain that to us. And I want to see if anyone else has been listening to how auto scaling saves you money. Don't all rush. I'm going to put you on speaker. So put your hand up. All right, Dean. All right. Let's see if I can see Dean. I'm going to unmute Dean.
Okay. Yep. You got me?
Yep.
Okay. So one of the cost advantages is you don't have to invest in a fixed amount of hardware to cover your peak load. And that means so you can reduce your data center costs by not having to have that hardware sitting in your data center idle. And equally, or the other, so that's comparing it with the on-premises option, having it in the cloud, not having your 100 instances running constantly with all of them running at 30% load is that's not cost effective. Whereas if you have 30 machines running or 40, 50 machines running at a higher load, they're getting more bang for buck.
Yeah, that's the exact right answer, Dean. So you're better able to match your resources at the point of time to what you need, not budget for your actual peak demand. Great. I'm going to mute you again. Okay, thanks, Dean. So let's see what other people says. You don't have to dedicate high-end machines. You're scaling up when you need it, Stephen says. That's right. And energy saving, yep, that's it, Katie. You're saving the environment. So generally, when you scale traditional systems, whether they're in-house or on-premise, every single person will ask you how many hits you're going to get, how many users you're going to get, how much something are you going to have. And what someone will do is attempt to work out what's your peak demand going to be. And then they'll put enough resources and CPU resources to meet that peak demand. But we're not doing that here. We'll put in some sort of reasonable minimum resources and have it scale up and scale down when it needs to. So it saves you money. And the auto scaling groups, guess how much they cost you? $0. So the auto scaling groups are totally free. The load balancer costs you a little bit. If they're all EC2 instances and not external to Amazon, they're nearly free. But there's not a lot of cost to the load balancers either, really. So a lot of this technology is actually quite cheap compared to the instances, and the auto scaling groups are free, which is pretty handy. Okay.